Statements expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of WWDB, its staff, or management.
You are listening to In the Know with David O. Informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio on 860 AM WWDB. And now, your host, Philadelphia Councilman David O.
Good afternoon. You're on the air with David O. You're in the know with David O. I hope you've had a great week, and we are back now for another show. Listen, this week we're going to hear from Professor Craig Green. He's a law professor at Temple's Beasley School of Law, and he's going to be talking about today's Supreme Court. I know many people are like, wow, that's a very boring topic. No, it's not. It's a very exciting topic, and one that I think you will be very surprised to learn about. Surprised not only by the facts, but also surprised at how interesting you find the entire topic. Professor Craig Green delivers this important knowledge in just a very entertaining and clear manner. And then we'll be hearing from Renee Wahl. She is a Nashville singer-songwriter. She had some time here in Philly. That's where I met her. Really fantastic background outside of music as well as in music. And she will be performing live as well as you will sample some of her music. And then we're going to talk to Justin Nordell. He is the executive director of the Philadelphia Folk Song Society, and this is the 56th year that the Philadelphia Folk Festival will be playing right in our area. And, it's an internationally known folk festival and really the oldest continuous running and one of the biggest and really something that really brings such great talent. But what makes it all so special? Well, we're going to talk to Justin and find out. But right now, let me thank my sponsors. Starting with Weinerman Pain and Wellness. They do a fantastic job in helping those who have been injured return to a full life or as full a life as possible. And so many times when you are not physically well, you are not emotionally or mentally well. And so that's an important job. They do wonderful work. I visited their place, and I thank them, of course, for sponsoring this show, which brings all my wonderful guests to your radio. Last week, if you recall, we had a set of guests on Gabriella Watson, who is a adjunct professor at Temple University. She is a documentary filmmaker, an independent producer, and an educator. And then we heard from House of Hamel, and we did say that we would be offering 2 of their CDs, House of Hamel, Wide Awake, and we got them autographed along with 2 tickets to go along with each of those CDs for the Sheila E. concert coming up at the Dell. So I don't know, Irish folk rock and Sheila E., put them together, what do you get? I don't know, but you can win that combo. And we also learned that you can learn to play the guitar for free or for $1 a month from Robert Swift. At Swift Guitar Lessons, learning guitar online, really at your convenience, and just really a fantastic. By the way, I am friends with Rob, and congratulations to him. He won, I think, a silver or gold medal at the Naga Jiu-Jitsu tournament. So he does put his fingers at risk doing jiu-jitsu in addition to playing the guitar. Let me start right now with Professor Craig Green. He is a very distinguished professor. He has got quite a great background in terms of his education. He received his Bachelor's of Science from Wake Forest University, his Juris Doctorate from Yale Law School. He received his Master's from Princeton University and is working on his PhD. He has won numerous awards for outstanding scholarship, distinguished teaching, outstanding professor of the year at Temple University Beasley School of Law. In addition to the other types of work that he has done, he's been interviewed on radio, television, and many many other things. And so our question, because we only have a limited time to go through this, our question for Professor Green is, what is going on in today's Supreme Court? And let me just put that within context. For so many, it's been kind of, quiet on don't hear that much about the Supreme Court, as opposed to back in the 60s during the Civil Rights era and all that stuff. But today, there's just a lot of things going on. You've heard about it in the news, travel ban, and then, the court says no, and then the court says something else, and then there's a whole thing going on with your privacy rights and so many other issues. And then it just seems like things have become more polarized these days in terms of far left, far right, getting justices on the Supreme Court. And so what is going on today in terms of our country? And we understand that the court systems, the courts and the Supreme Court in particular, has an ability to limit the role of even the President of the United States. And that court may be changing. And so with that, Professor Green, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here. And I guess just to jump right into it, people may or may not think about the courts all the time and every day. But, you think about Philadelphia, you go to Independence Hall or the Constitution Center or whatever, the things that make the Constitution real for people in America 21st century, it's largely the Supreme Court that does it. So that's the first thing to say, is that the courts really serve as a counterbalance in some ways to real big political transitions, and that's exactly what we're in the middle of now. Second thing about the Supreme Court right now, maybe for the last 30 years, people have taken for granted the court has been sort of, for experts anyway, has been largely divided roughly 5-4 vote. And that's been true for about 30 years.
That's very close, 5-4.
That's right. And so all the most important issues of the day, even in the 21st century, almost all the issues of the day, they go to the Supreme Court. So you have cases like the travel ban, which is on the way there. People forget, but, Republicans were unable to repeal Obamacare. The Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of Obamacare twice. If they voted the other way, they wouldn't have had to repeal it. It would have been struck down. Of course, LGBT rights and same-sex marriage, issues of racial diversity in education, issues of racial justice in law enforcement. All of these things have come before the Supreme Court time and time again. It's 5-4, nice edge sort of balance between relatively liberal justices, relatively conservative justice. What's happening today? What's happening today is, of course, Donald Trump and Senate Republicans delayed the appointment of a Supreme Court justice for a full year in order to promise that they would have a stalwart conservative justice that they could really deliver for their political base. And that's exactly what they did. They delayed the nomination and then put in Neil Gorsuch, who is now a very conservative, one of the most conservative members of the court. That's said and done. But I think the really important thing for people to know is that the middle of that 5-4 split, Justice Kennedy, the middle justice, that guy is probably going to resign this year. And President Trump and Senate Republicans will have the opportunity to appoint another equally or even more conservative justice that I think will shift the Supreme Court's jurisprudence in court cases more than any time in the last probably 70 years.
So when you say that, right now there are people who are saying yes, and people are saying, oh, no. What's happening in terms of the politics in our country that is more and more polarized as the Supreme Court has got to make these decisions?
Sure. In the immediate sense, I mean, the delay of Chief Judge Merrick Garland's nomination, that had never happened before, and it made people very, very upset. The idea of having an 8-justice court for a full year never happened before. That really politicized things. And another thing is that I think people understand, politicians understand how much the court matters. The only promise that President Trump has clearly delivered on is Neil Gorsuch. That is the only promise, and I think that's exactly what a large number of conservatives and liberals really value the issues. Just think of that list again: the travel ban, executive power, torture in Guantanamo, LGBT rights. All of the hot-button issues, and a large number of hot-button issues that divide the country politically. Well, those cases also go to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court in earlier times, I think it may be fair to say, was a little less polarized, maybe like the Senate or any other number of political institutions. But I think that in the last year or so, maybe two, I think more of the gloves have come off, more of the knuckles have turned brass, and I think that people are really fighting for the values of the Constitution that are going to be decided by the Supreme Court, for the next probably 20 years.
Let me ask you this, and let me start with this example. I posted on Facebook, that I was meeting with and happy to meet with some international students, young leaders from the Middle East, Turkey, Iran, other places. And some nice person, they put a little angry face on my post, and I think probably because they felt that, hey, these people are Muslims, they're anti-U.S., they're probably not Christians or whatever is going on, and so it just to me is an example of how people can react on the surface, make a decision without knowing deeply, what the issues are. And so whether people like or don't like, a certain issue, let me take the travel ban. Could you break that down from a legal perspective, not from like an opinion, like a lot of people have opinions, but just in terms of the courts and what are the constitutional issues that are involved in the travel ban?
Sure. So one thing, just to stress this point about the court, we live in a country where a court interpreting a constitution can stand up to a president and say no. And that really is, relative to some of the other countries you mentioned, some of the countries around the world, that's a really peculiar and quite frankly sometimes marvelous thing about America, is that will be decided by people who hear the arguments and appeal to the law. What's the legal issue? In one sense, I think, just for simple terms, the issue in some ways is whether the travel ban has any connection to religious discrimination or violations of equality, treating people differently from different countries based on the dominant religion of those countries.
Yeah, but why is that important when we're talking about people who aren't American citizens? They're not even U.S. citizens.
Sure. Well, of course, there are a lot of rights that non-U.S. citizens have, and there are a lot of rights that affect presidential policy. But the legal issue the Supreme Court is going to decide, I think that most people believe that if President Trump had said we're only going to admit, for example, non-Muslim people, if that had been literally a Muslim ban, if that had been the executive order, I think that would have been unconstitutional, and most people agree about that. The order isn't written that way, at least not the revised version. The revised version tries to be more subtle. Whatever you might read on his Twitter account, the revised version tries to be more subtle about it, and so the court confronts this really hard question. Should they interpret the travel ban like it's written by their DOJ lawyers in the sort of passivity of an office, or should they interpret it like the president says it actually is, which is religious discrimination? I think that's a very, very hard question. It affects a lot about presidential power. No Congress, no statute travel ban. This is all just an executive order designed by the president himself. And does the Constitution have anything to say about the type of immigration, type of people we allow into the country? Or is that just a matter of presidential discretion to do whatever he wants, including perhaps under the table religious discrimination? That's a very, very hard case. It matters everything. Who are the justices who decide that? So the ability to appoint another justice, for example, could absolutely change the result in that case. It is very hard to know.
Could we go a little bit fundamental? Because there's probably some people scratching their heads right now saying, but Professor, I don't really understand what the problem is, because the president's the president's, and the president is making a decision for the safety of the country, and he's in charge of immigration. And again, the Constitution, isn't that about Americans? Why does the Constitution extend to citizens of other countries that are not even U.S. citizens?
Sure. Well, one thing to say, and this is something that I think really is fundamental, is that, of course, there are lots of non-citizens in the United States who have lots of constitutional rights. Nobody thinks that when a non-citizen gets arrested by the cops, they don't have, Miranda rights, or the right to have counsel or something like this. Nobody thinks that non-citizens in the U.S. don't have First Amendment rights. Now, this travel ban, though, goes a little farther than that, because, of course, it's dealing with non-U.S. citizens who are not located within the United States. And so I think that there are two things about that. One is the constitutional issue, whether religious discrimination is religious discrimination anyway. And another is that there are statutes by Congress that forbid various kinds of discrimination, and has the president violated those? So there are these legal, or there could be these, there's argued to be these legal constraints, as there are many cases there are, of how the American government treats people who are not American citizens. And I think that part of things, some of those are very well established.
I'm going to put you on a hot spot. What would happen if the court went a certain way and said, yes, we can have this travel ban, let's do all these things? And what would happen if the court went the other way and said, oh, no, that's discrimination of peoples, it violates our Constitution, the values that we have? How would those two very different results affect our country?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things I'd want to say real quick. One of them is on this question of discrimination. I think the travel ban has been interpreted around the world as a signal of what America stands for in the age of Trump. And I think there may be benefits to that, but there are certainly costs. And America is seen, right or wrong, as a welcoming place, a place of religious toleration, again, all the way back to Philadelphia Independence Hall and beyond. So I think that aspect, it's a really dramatic symbol of what America stands for, what the legal order stands for, how we're perceived for other countries, how we stand up to our international law responsibilities. Sure, there's that. But the other thing is this claim about keeping America safe. The DOJ lawyers, the Department of Justice lawyers, the government lawyers have had a terribly hard time explaining how this 90 or 120-day restriction on admittees of immigrants from 6 countries is actually going to keep the country safe. It's a very hard explanation to offer. There's not very much information or data the government has been able to put forward of any actual concrete risk, as opposed to just a political promise, any actual risk that justifies that kind of national security restriction. Now, there are justices on the court today, including Neil Gorsuch, who have basically taken the president's word for it. He says, trust us. They say, how far? Sounds good to us. And I think this second aspect of how much do you trust the president whenever he waves the label national security to do whatever doesn't seem necessarily like a very rational policy, but do whatever he wants to do. You know, that kind of approach, the approach of trusting the president whenever they wave the national security flag, that was very troublesome after 9/11 for people who remember that. And it's super troublesome when you think back to World War II, and that principle underlay Japanese internment, of course, back in the 1940s. So I think that is a second area. One is this idea of religious discrimination, what does America stand for? And the second is this balance of power and how much the president gets to decide on his own and with no judicial supervision what it is that's going to keep America safe. And I have to tell you that there have been people in the past who have been worried about that and thought that courts should be checking a little bit of the homework, and that America's separation of powers works better when the courts step in and demand some sort of explanation, some sort of plausibility to the idea that this kind of policy is so deviant from some views of American traditions that this kind of policy actually would keep America safe. It's hard to see. In the time this travel ban, as everybody knows, maybe it's been on hold for months. And there hasn't been any concrete adverse effect on national security while it's been on hold, while the lower courts have put injunctions and put stays and kept it from coming into effect. What has happened? And the answer is a big nothing so far. Of course, the president continues to make the same arguments with absolutely no remorse or shame about it. Yes, now it's important. But I think the court, if the court accepts the president's arguments, I think it's a real step in a different direction in terms of trusting the president and maybe abdicating some level of real legalism and some sort of checks and balances and separation of powers in a very important area of national security.
Let me just let our listeners know that Professor Craig Green did serve in the Department of Justice, so in fact he worked there at DOJ. And let me ask you this: I mean, so with all that's been going on, we've got a new Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch, and we might be looking at yet another one. With all these changes that have happened somewhat recently, I think. How would you define today's Supreme Court, and what are we looking at for tomorrow's Supreme Court?
Yeah, I think today's Supreme Court, with Gorsuch as a very conservative justice replacing Justice Scalia, who was also a very conservative justice, I think right now people who watch the court, who study the court, It's somewhere between holding their breath and watching the inevitable happen. I think that on issues of racial justice or LGBT rights or national security rights or the travel ban, I think that the replacement of Justice Kennedy, which I think is very, very likely next year, by Donald Trump, by someone who's likely to be at least as conservative, maybe more conservative than Justice Gorsuch, it will really shift the course of American law, and particularly American constitutional law, in a very conservative direction, which is what the president promised to do and what the election results of his winning produced. So that's I did work for the Department of Justice under the Bush administration, and that was another very controversial election, and the Republican candidate won the presidency, and that had very profound effects on how the court moved. But I think this time it's different. I think this time with Justice Kennedy as the knife's edge fifth vote getting replaced, I think we're going to see changes on the court and in constitutional law that we haven't seen in many decades.
With some new technology that has affected the entire world, cyber terrorism and all those type of things, these new issues now coming in front of this court, how do you see that? And for example, my privacy, how is that going to turn out?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, and that is an area where the court really has to share the field with other policymakers. So cyber terrorism, for example, the most important issue today is interference with elections. That's not going to be decided by the court. That'll be decided by how this administration and Congress decide to try to protect the ballot box. In turn, some of the issues you mentioned in terms of privacy, those things are so important with respect not just to sort of cyber terrorism or this sort of stuff, but police technologies. And I think an idea of having a court that protects privacy rights relative to important and very important police technologies, I think is going to be another thing that comes before the court. And the same thing applies, which is who sits on the court affects the kinds of results that come out of the court. And I think there's just no question that the Trump presidency and the Republicans, particularly in the Senate, almost dictate that there's going to be a real shift to the right in terms of privacy and in terms of those new technologies. I think one can expect a real move in that direction.
Have you, over the last couple of years, really noted some surprising decisions from the Supreme Court?
Yes, a lot of surprising decisions. Let me mention two that I think I've been surprised about, and one of them may be, for some number of your listeners, may be a positive decision. I think the same-sex marriage decision by the U.S. Supreme Court had an enormous effect on the politics and on the media and on the culture and the rest of it. And I think that was a long time coming in a sense, but it also still felt a little like a surprise, I have to say, for me anyway. Justice Kennedy was the fifth vote on that decision. Okay. And, I think for people who'd watched him for a long time, it wasn't clear he was going to go that far. Well, he did. And so did the court, and so did the country. On the other hand, there's a case that about the same time, a little bit earlier, where the Supreme Court really restricted the application of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, areas in which the Supreme Court and the Congress and the Department of Justice had all worked together to try to make sure that African Americans in particular and racial minorities more generally were not being disenfranchised and cut out of the ballot box. These branches working together, the Supreme Court struck it down in large part and really weakened the protections for voting in the country and licensed policymakers at the state and local level to cut people out of the ballot box and cut people out of the democracy and cut people out of we the people. And I thought that was a shocking decision for me. I never would have expected it. And so I think this is the sort of thing that it's true. A lot of this stuff operates under the radar, but I guess my sort of message is that I think these kinds of decisions really do shape the way the country works on Election Day, in our private lives, and in terms of our interaction with the government. And I just think the court, it's sort of my professional guild or whatever, I focus on the court all the time, but I really think that America, the courts as an institution, the decisions the court makes have such an impact on the way everything else works around here.
We are anticipating some interesting new cases. For example, the whole issue, however people feel about sanctuary cities. I understand that's there's a lawsuit there, and then there's a number of ethics issues about the president and his family members, and what are their limitations and what are they supposed to be transparent about. Is that coming on deck, or is that just kind of floating out in the atmosphere?
I think the ones that are really on deck are, there's a case about the ability of a cake maker to refuse to serve a same-sex wedding. And so that's one case that's really coming along. That's a really big deal case. The case you mentioned about sanctuary cities also very well may make it to the Supreme Court. The issue there really is about how much money can the federal government punish cities for taking a policy they don't like. And maybe the irony of it or whatever else is that the dominant case for that principle is actually the Obamacare decision that Chief Justice Roberts wrote just a couple of years ago. And the message was, that if you don't do the immigration policy the federal government wants, then maybe the federal government doesn't pay your immigration money. But they can't pull your Medicaid, and they can't pull your education funding, and they can't bankrupt your city or your state because you're not doing one thing that they want you to do. And I think that, too, if the government continues to fight it, and it could conceivably go to the Supreme Court. And I think that also, if that case were to go, and just to sort of to spell it out in terms of speculation, if that case were to go toward the president, then there'd be an enormous amount of power for Congress to boss around states and cities on just about everything. Because anytime you did anything the federal government didn't want, they'd say, oh, we'll take all your money away. And so I think it's bigger in some ways, although the sanctuary city issue is very big. It matters a heck of a lot for the economies and the societies of cities and the functionality of police force, of course, too. But it's even bigger than that. It's about the extent to which the federal government can boss around states and local government. And the irony is, maybe if you want, is that these are folks who are always talking about small federal governments, but not when it comes to
limited role of government. Sure.
Only sometimes. And it's true that could give rise to a constitutional issue down the road. It could come in front of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's very interesting as we look to the future that America may not be the America that we're used to. It may shift this way or that way. It's looking like going in a certain direction. But, so, maybe in the future people will be more attuned to what's happening in the Supreme Court and the courts around them, as there's this clash between what the polarized America wants, who they elect, and what they try to do, and the courts are right there. Hopefully to be that third branch of government, but, of course, they get appointed and we see which way they go.
So true.
Well, Professor, thank you for joining us and sharing all that knowledge. I'll ask our listeners to stay tuned because we'll be right back with Renee Wahl, who will be telling us about her songwriting, and we'll be listening to some of her music.
You are listening to In the Know with David O. Informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio on 860 AM WWDB.
Here at Sonny's Famous Cheesesteaks, we have the utmost respect for the founding fathers of our fair city's most celebrated sandwich. But we also understand the inevitability of time marching on. So come to Sonny's in Old City for a revolutionary take on the classic. And try the cheesesteak that Alan Richmond of GQ magazine named the best in Philadelphia. And declare your inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of cheesiness. Sonny's Famous Steaks, 228 Market.
My friends, this is Joe Kraus. You've heard me on Philadelphia radio now for over 20 years, and you know I don't often endorse products or people unless they are real game changers. I want to tell you about Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located in Center City, Philadelphia. And at the end of this short personal endorsement, I want you to consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness. If you are recovering from an injury, if you or a family member has been diagnosed with a disorder that has stopped you in your tracks, or if you're like me, determined to learn about wellness while getting yourself prepared to stay healthy so you can enjoy the blessings of your family. Remember the name of this warm and caring location, Weinerman Pain and Wellness. Why should you consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness? Because they are who you expect them to be. Weinerman Pain and Wellness on the web at WeinermanPainandWellness.com.
Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located at 100 South Broad Street, just south of City Hall. Call Weinerman Pain and Wellness at 215-988-9503. That's 215-988-9503. Call today. Today's broadcast is brought to you by the Philly Labor RX Injured Workers Pharmacy Network, featuring PPC Pharmacy, First Choice Pharmacy, and Precision Scripts, providing injured workers with premium products and services from the point of injury through the entire healing process. The Philly Labor RX Pharmacy Network cares about injured workers.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps demonstrate their commitment to defend the American way of life. Since 1775, we have served our nation as a force in readiness. From combat operations to humanitarian assistance in every corner of the world. No matter where the mission takes us today, or wherever our country needs us tomorrow, we always remember the land we call home. As Marines, we take a stand for each other, for our nation, for us all. The few, the proud, the Marines.
All right, we are back. This is Councilman David Oh. You are in the know with David Oh. We were just listening to Professor Craig Green. Do you feel like going to law school now? Certainly not boring, right? Very interesting. Fascinating stuff. You know, I just think knowledge can be so entertaining. Speaking of which, we had on our show last week a Irish folk rock group, House of Hamel, the violin, the guitar, great lyrics. And they were so kind to autograph a couple of their CDs, House of Hamel, Wide Awake. And so what we're going to do is this. If you want to win this along with 2 tickets, so we got 2 prizes, 1 CD for each person, 2 CDs, 2 prizes. But they come along with 2 tickets to see Sheila E. at the Dell Center. Rain or Shine event. Doors open at 6 p.m. Thursday, August 17th. Show begins at 7 o'clock. So 2 tickets, 1 CD. What you have to do is you have to think of a number between 1 and 500. 1 and 500. And just send me an email, David O Radio Show at gmail.com. David O, 2 letters, OH, radio show at gmail.com. Listen, if you throw in a funny joke, if your number is like, you know, kind of like borderline, the funny joke gets the prize. And we'll announce it next week, Tuesday, 2 to 3, here on In the Know with David O, WWDB 860 AM. And just a reminder, August the 17th, same day, Thursday, First Responder Appreciation Day here in Philadelphia. So, you know, our first responders, police officers, firefighters, emergency medical folks have such a tough job, and it would be so uplifting for folks just to say thank you. I know I'm looking at Renee. I know our service members really appreciate when someone says thank you. And by the way, so do your council members. You know, people say thank you. It goes a long way. And so let's keep our first responders in mind. But right now, let me introduce Renee through a clip from her CD, one of her CDs. This song is called "See You on the Way Down."
First touch, first kiss. There is nothing that feels like this. Your breath on my skin just blows me away. And I'm a feather floating in your sky. Halfway to heaven, watch the world drift by. I'm soaking in your sunshine, but it feels like I'm just waiting on the rain. This isn't gonna end well. just melts away. But you're the calm before the hurricane. I'm a rooster spinning on your weather vane. I hear wind chimes in the sky just change.
All right, beautiful music from Renee Wahl, and she is from Harrisburg originally.
Yes.
Spent time in Philly, went to Temple University, and just to let you know, she served in the U.S. Air Force. She had top secret clearance and was a captain in the Air Force assigned to NSA.
Yes.
So she's listening to our discussion with
Yes, absolutely.
Professor Craig
I
Green
guess I
here.
shouldn't joke about that.
No, joking isn't allowed. Got her undergraduate degree in physics and her master's in aeronautics. And here she is, a country music singer, huh?
Right. Yes, absolutely. From point A to point B. Just an interesting path there.
But it's interesting because all of that, I suppose, it just adds a lot of a breath to your songwriting.
It certainly does. I mean, any experience that you have in life adds to being able to write a lyric, write an expression of what you went through, and also the ability to understand what other people are going through to a certain extent and write about that. So, every experience that I've had has helped me get to the point where I am now and to be, I think, a better songwriter because of that.
And one of the things that you've done is kind of defined your music in a certain way. How would you describe it?
We're actually coining a new term. Hopefully nobody else has used this before, but we'll go with country roots noir.
Country
Yes.
roots noir.
Yes, the lyrical topics tend to be a little on the darker side.
Yes,
and,
yes.
We were having this conversation beforehand in the room with Justin about folk music and how there is a stereotype. There's this, this preconceived notion of what a certain genre is. But, you say country, people think of you one way. You say folk, you get another stereotype thrown at you. And a lot of times we use Americana or roots rock or alternative country. So there's this mixture of country, blues, a little bit of blues in there. But it's all lyric driven. It really is. There may be some pop aspects to the song structure.
Right.
But so, make it interesting for people because really you're making music for other people. You're making it for yourself, but you really want to reach out and be able to touch somebody with that music. So I think that's where the genres can be a little deceiving and maybe not tell the whole story. So we're going with country roots noir.
I like it. There is a noir film festival. I always have trouble saying that word. Noir.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, but I understand it to be like something that leads to like a bad decision that leads to another thing that leads on a downward spiral.
Pretty much, yes. That's what it's all about.
Oh my goodness. All right. So people can experience your music this Thursday, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to be at the Grape Room at 8 o'clock. So my drummer and I, David Strayer, will be there as a duo. And, please come out. We'd love to see you.
Yeah, the Grape
Say you
Room
heard us.
on Grape Street in
Maniac,
Maniac.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if people want to, kind of learn more about you and also check out your music,
yes.
Do you have a website to tell folks?
I do. It's ReneeWahl.com. And, of course, my last name is spelled W-A-H-L. Unfortunately, for the people not in the studio, you can't see it written on my guitar. I make it easier for people to know how to spell it. But it's R-E-N-E-E-W-A-H-L. And from there, of course, they can get show dates and they can get links to Amazon Music, iTunes, all of that. And they can actually purchase some of the music right there on the website.
All right. Fantastic. Well, you're going to perform with Dave, your drummer.
Yes.
One of your original songs.
Yes.
And this is Whiskey Smells Like Bad Decisions.
Yes, of course, because we have to keep with the theme. I'm going to stand up for this just so you can get a little bit of the guitar.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll do it that way.
Oh, what?
Of course, there's a big old truck. Is it a truck?
Yeah, I know. Might be an airplane.
I know.
Okay, we're good.
Really, right here, we're good.
All
Okay,
right.
great. So this is called Whiskey Smells Like Bad Decisions, and just a quick caveat on the working for the NSA. When we were thinking of a band name, my manager Rodney, we came up with Sworn Secrets.
There you
so
go.
It's Renee Wahl and the Sworn Secrets, and the EP that introduces that is called Sworn Secrets. So if you like that, this is the first track we heard is the first track on the EP, and this is the last track.
All right.
Thank you.
I've been careful not to think about you. I keep the door locked on the cabinet in the cellar, 'cause I know that if I didn't, I'd keep drinking and my tears would keep falling. And I'd end up in some stranger's room, drowning memories of you. Oh, whiskey smells like bad decisions. Oh, and trust me, I don't need help making those. I've been doing all I can, it's calling me again, and I can't seem to keep this key. Whiskey smells like bad decisions. You used to come home always later than you should have, and you'd reek of liquor and some other woman's perfume, and you tell me it's my fault that you'd been drinking and my tears would keep falling. 'Cause you'd end up in some stranger's room while I cover up another bruise. Oh, whiskey smells like bad decisions. Oh, and trust me, I don't need help making those. I've been doing all I can, it's calling me again, and I can't seem to keep this key up. Whiskey smells like bad decisions. Ooh, whiskey smells like bad decisions.
All right, Renee Wahl. Check her out this Thursday at the Great Room in Manayunk. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You are listening to In the Know with David O. Informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio on 860 AM WWDB.
My friends, this is Joe Krause. You've heard me on Philadelphia radio now for over 20 years, and you know I don't often endorse products or people unless they are real game changers. I want to tell you about Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located in Center City, Philadelphia. And at the end of this short personal endorsement, I want you to consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness. If you are recovering from an injury, if you or a family member has been diagnosed with a disorder that has stopped you in your tracks, or if you're like me, determined to learn about wellness while getting yourself prepared to stay healthy so you can enjoy the blessings of your family. Remember the name of this warm and caring location, Weinerman Pain and Wellness. Why should you consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness? Because they are who you expect them to be. Weinerman Pain and Wellness on the web at WeinermanPainandWellness.com.
Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located at 100 South Broad Street, just south of City Hall. Call Weinerman Pain and Wellness at 215-988-9503. That's 215-988-9503. Call today. Today's broadcast is brought to you by the Philly Labor RX Injured Workers Pharmacy Network, featuring PPC Pharmacy, First Choice Pharmacy, and Precision Scripts, providing injured workers with premium products and services from the point of injury through the entire healing process. The Philly Labor RX Pharmacy Network cares about injured workers.
At any given moment, somewhere in America, a baby is taking a first step, a developmental milestone. But for too many parents, a baby's first steps aren't just a milestone. They're a miracle. These are the parents of babies who were born prematurely or with birth defects. It's a crisis affecting more than 500,000 babies in the United States each year. You can help them by joining volunteers like you who walk in March for Babies. The money you raise funds research and local programs that help babies overcome the challenges of premature birth and birth defects. Together, our steps make stronger, healthier babies a reality for thousands of families. Sign up today at marchforbabies.org to take the steps that help make milestones and even miracles possible. Who will you march for?
Introducing the YMCA. What, you already know the why? Or so you think. Sure, you know the why for a swim, a workout, even a game of hoops. But did you know we're more than that? We're a cause. When you take your jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Take a cardio class, while kids are in an after-school enrichment program. Practice your downward-facing dog as a teen practices her leadership skills. That's the why. We work with people no matter their age, income, or background and give them the opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive, all with one simple goal in mind, to strengthen our community. And we've got so much more that does just that. So while you might think of the Y as that place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. Introducing the Y. We're so much more than a place. We're a cause. Visit ymca.net/more.
All right, and we are back. Listen, we were totally entertained by Renee Wahl and Sworn Secrets. She's got one of her secrets here, her drummer, Dave. And but you can find her at the Grape Room this Thursday. What time, Renee?
Yes, we're on at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. Be sure you're there. You know, she's traveled a long way from Nashville. She's here to perform, and you'll be happy to catch her there. And, of course, we were listening to Professor Craig Green telling us about the importance of the Supreme Court and how it is changing and how we may really be more and more attuned to what is going on with our Supreme Court. But now let me introduce Justin Nordell. He is the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Folk Song Society. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, David.
Oh, perfect. Listen, you are someone who kind of grew up with the Folk Festival. Is that right?
That is correct. My parents met at the Philadelphia Folk Festival.
Wow.
In fact, my mother met all four of her husbands at the Philadelphia Folk Festival.
Uh-oh.
So single ladies, come on down.
Uh-oh. Well, I don't know. Maybe I should go. I should check it out. No, but you know, we were just talking about that, like how it's such a significant event. I mean, the Philadelphia Folk Festival in its 56th year, just the world-renowned festival.
It's really amazing because I'll go to international events and music conferences and meet musicians from all over the world that have heard of Philadelphia Folk Festival. But then I'll walk down the street in Philly and tell people about it, and they'll say, "Wait, what? Where? Here? Really?"
Yeah.
So it's always astounded me that it's such a paramount event in the music world and in the folk world, but in Philadelphia, it's definitely become kind of a hidden gem that we really wish more people knew about.
Well, you could tell them about it right now because it's coming up, right?
Absolutely. It's going to be August 17th through the 20th. And while we're the Philadelphia Folk Festival, we're right outside of Philadelphia in Upper Salford Township. That's in Montgomery County. And you can take the Turnpike or SEPTA to the Lansdale Exeter Station, and it's just a couple miles from there. And we are going strong for 56 years now. We're the oldest continuously run outdoor music festival in all of North America.
And some really big names, and one of them I recognize, Graham Nash, right? Crosby, Stills, and Nash?
Yep, we've got Graham Nash coming this year, as well as our friends Old Crow Medicine Show off of their Grammy win.
Wow.
We've got some astounding new talents, Sierra Hull and Samantha Fish, who've been really blazing the way both in Americana and blues. And then we've got Taj Mahal and Keb Mo, two absolutely astounding talents who are actually playing together, just recorded an album together for the first time, and we are so excited to have them there.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I was looking at this highlighted name in my notes, Eric Anderson, who wrote songs for Johnny Cash, Bob Dylan, The Grateful Dead.
Yep, and that's the thing, is that we have so many songwriters and so many performers that you don't know that you know.
Yeah.
We also have Larry Campbell and Teresa Williams, who've played with Dylan since, probably the 60s, and have been doing all sorts of incredible music both on their own and with some of the most outstanding talents in the industry.
Yeah, I've heard from people what a great time it is. It's, like Friday through Sunday, and you said 35,000 people roll through there?
Yeah, we have about 35,000 cumulative people that come over the course of the weekend, and then we actually have about 7,000 to 8,000 that actually camp and stay on site for the entirety of the festival. We're on an 83-acre farm, and so there's plenty of room for the entire family.
Well, what's not to love about that? How much does it cost to get into this?
Great question. We've got a number of different ticket prices and levels if you're going to come for the day or if you're going to come for the whole weekend, ranging from $10 for the kids to if you want to come for the whole shebang and camp, it's about $260.
Wow. Okay. Well, listen, where do people go? A website, in order to get those tickets, find out who's playing, what the schedule is?
If you just go to folkfest.org or the Philadelphia Folk Song Society's website, pfs.org, that's paulfranksam.org, you can find everything from the full schedule, the full lineup, see a lot of incredible local acts playing there as well. We pride ourselves on booking some of the best talents in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I was just talking to some of my friends, just telling them about, because PHL Live is coming up, that, one of the most surprising genres for me, not that I'm a music expert, was a country folk genre, and how much I love that entire show. Every year, country folk is like one of the best, venues to go to, and, folk music is oftentimes misunderstood by people, because it's not, people think they know country, they know hip-hop, they know rap, they know rock. How would you describe folk music?
Well, I jokingly say, because of the preconceived notions, that folk is just another four-letter F word. Because a lot of people hear folk and they have kind of this, it's going to be a white guy with a guitar on his and we've got plenty of those. But we also have an outstanding number of talents from all sorts of subgenres, because folk is really about storytelling of a time or a place, and Philadelphia has always been known for its songwriting. And under that kind of umbrella term of folk, singer-songwriters, hip-hop, country, rap, all of those are forms of folk music. And so we've really strived to have all of those subgenres represented at the Philadelphia Folk Festival. And we've got 111 acts on 8 stages over 4 nights and 3 days. So there's a little of something for everyone. And then we actually now have our very own venue for the first time in our 60-year history in Roxborough that we just are opening up at 6156 Ridge Avenue in Roxborough, PA. So come check out some folk music all year long, and you'll hear that it's not your grandpappy's folk music anymore.
No, it sure isn't. I mean, I really enjoyed the music, and for those who may not have really thought about the category folk music like as one to go, I mean, just a wide variety of instruments, music, some of it really kind of rocking, the electric guitars going, just really, really outstanding music. A lot of fun, too.
Absolutely, and it's something that, again, I'm biased. I was brought up on, and it's something that's always been a part of my musical heritage, but it's something that so many people find so many different things to connect to. Again, it's all about the musicality, and it's all about the songwriting. So just an outstanding genre that I don't think gets enough credit that it deserves. So I'm hoping a lot more people will come check us out in Roxborough and will come visit us at the 56th Annual Philadelphia Folk Festival. Again, that's running August 17th through the 20th, right up in Upper Southford Township, Pennsylvania.
Oh, perfect. Now, a little bit about you, because you have got this very interesting background in the arts. While you grew up at the feet of whatever the folk festival, you've also been with the Film Society, the Pennsylvania Ballet, Funimation, what else?
I like to describe myself as culturally promiscuous.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Which I honestly think is what the average Philadelphian is. There isn't someone in Philadelphia that is just an art museum subscriber.
Right.
We're art museum subscribers, we're opera subscribers, we're ballet subscribers, we're members of the Folk Song Society, members of the Film Society, members of the Clef Club. We are going out because Philadelphia is such an incredible art city that there's always something to do. So it's definitely something that I've grown very passionate about in my career here in the Philadelphia nonprofit art spectrum, and I'm really happy to bring it all home to the Philadelphia Folk Song Society as we're, again, opening up our own venue and music school in Roxborough and continuing traditions here at the Philadelphia Folk Festival.
So with that background, what do you see for the future of the organization and for the Folk Festival?
That's a great question, David. The Philadelphia Folk Song Society began within the last couple of years working with local musicians to do professional development work. It's not necessarily, this is how you play this chord, but this is how you make the most money off your taxes. This is why you'll never get booked at that venue again. This is, the things that you can be doing to route yourself better. These kind of professional development things that are kind of these industry secrets that you kind of have to know people to be able to kind of get the inner knowledge. We've developed something called the Philadelphia Music Co-op, which is an outstanding consortium of musicians here in Philadelphia that we work with year-round. And so really utilizing the co-op to both showcase what Philadelphia has to offer musically, as well as making sure that they're on the path to be the best performers representing Philadelphia nationally and internationally.
Well, that's news to me, and exciting news. I certainly invite all our listeners to check out the Philadelphia Folk Song Society and all the work that you're doing. Clearly, set aside some time, for August 17th through the 20th for the big, dynamic Philadelphia Folk Festival, internationally known, and you could partake just a few minutes drive. Okay, so listen, everyone, again, if you are interested in winning those autographed House of Hamill CDs and the Sheila E. tickets, go to davidoradioshow@gmail.com. Give me a number 1 through 500 and throw in a funny joke, and they are yours. We'll announce it on our show next week, next Tuesday, 2 to 3, right here on this show.
You've been listening to In the Know with David O on 860 AM WWDB. Tune in again next Tuesday at 2 p.m. for more informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio with Philadelphia Councilman David O.